Hi, this is Pastor Ralph, and I just want to talk to you a little bit about the trip I just took, kind of halfway around the world. It was actually 12 time zones away, about 36 hours door to door. I started out in Paris, France, and I was there with my friend Dan Lucero, who is a strange guy. He's a guy that accepted the Lord in a drug treatment center in Spain, fell in love with one of the girls who worked there who was a Christian. As a result of that, felt called to France as a missionary, came back to the United States, graduated from college, got a master's degree, won a Fulbright scholarship to fund his way to go back into France and become a missionary. When I was with him in 2000, they had about 7 churches. When I was just with them, we had about 45 churches present, and good things are happening all over France. France is still only about 1% Protestant. The rest are Catholic, but they don't go to church. So it's kind of a secular nation. Islam is growing rapidly in France. About 10% of the population are now Muslims, and the French people are really worried that they're going to lose their whole show to Islamic people. And so this is a really important thing, that the church would continue to grow and that good things would happen. We had a lot more people at the seminar than we expected. I like to keep it small because I want it to be very interactive. We ended up with 95 people registered for the seminar that we had asked for 25 to 30 to come to. From France, I got on a plane and flew about the distance between here to San Francisco to Athens, Greece. And in Athens, my friends George and Margarita Patsoras are the pastors. George is Greek. He's an attorney by trade who became a pastor on the side and built the largest church in Greece. Margarita was born and raised in Puerto Rico and moved to Greece to do some other mission work, and she met and fell in love with George, and they have some wonderful kids. We had another large group. We expected a small group. We ended up with about 200 people the first night, but the communists, in rebellion against what's going on with Greece having to make all these financial cutbacks to save their economy, shut down the city the second night that we were there, and so it cut our crowd in half. Everybody's really sad about that. But these people are pretty excited. They've planted about 10 churches over the life of their church. It's an older congregation, but they've got vision. They actually do their services in 8 different languages. They translate. So they got people from all over the world there. And they think that they could send people back as missionaries, and it's a pretty exciting thing to just be a part of all of that. And be part of their vision. I also, while I was there, because in Greece everybody has a job in the daytime, the seminar schedule was from 6 till 10 o'clock at night. Can you imagine coming and listening to me talk for 4 hours every night after work? It was quite a deal. But it gave us some free time in the daytime, and so I got to go to visit Corinth. I got to see some of the artifacts that are there, walk the streets that Paul would have walked. A very interesting time for me. Every time I read now in Corinthians or read in Acts about the church in Corinth, it's like I've been there. It all comes to life. A lot smaller place than I thought it was going to be. They took me on another day to Mars Hill, and I got to climb the steps that Paul would have climbed and speak on talk of Mars Hill. He spoke there, I didn't. I just went to visit. It's about half the size of our auditorium. It's surprisingly small. Nearby was the Acropolis. We climbed to the top of that. That place is huge, much bigger than it looks in the pictures. The columns are about 80 feet tall, and very interesting, once-in-a-lifetime experience for me. So I was really thrilled to do that. From there, in Athens, I jumped on a plane and went to a place called Kyiv in the Ukraine. We all say Kiev in the Ukraine. They correct us. It's Kyiv in the Ukraine. And this is a place that is very beautiful. It's got a wonderful, very old culture, a Christian culture. The buildings are gorgeous, that were built before the Soviet era. And yet, when the Soviets came in, they really destroyed everything. And you see these ugly apartment buildings where they bulldozed or dynamited just beautiful buildings to house people in a very shabby way. Met a guy who had been a soldier in the Russian army. He said, by his own words, he wasn't a very good soldier. He was called to patrol the border between Russia and Romania and make sure that no one ever escaped from Russia into Romania, which was part of the Soviet bloc, so escaping from one part to another doesn't make much sense. He didn't like chasing people down, so they put him on a work detail Today he's a very, very successful Christian businessman, doing very well with a lot of vision. This church that I was in is pastored by a guy named Dimitri Mason. He's a friend of my friend Jeff Roper, who is a Foursquare missionary, who's kind of overseeing that area of the world. He's not Foursquare. He pastors a church that meets in a theater on a college campus, and they have about 1,300 people. They've been in existence for 17 years, and they've started 44 churches in the Ukraine. Perhaps Dimitri and his crew got more out of the thing. They sponsored the seminar for all the other people who came from other places, Russia and places like that. But these guys picked up a vision that they could go outside the borders of Ukraine and plant churches. And I think the whole trip was worth doing. There again, we had way more people than we expected. I was looking for 25 people and probably came in closer to 200. An interesting thing about that church in the Ukraine is that the pastor is Jewish. His father survived the prison camp at Buchenwald in World War II. Several different times the work detail that he was on was scheduled to be killed, and he would be moved just before these people were sent to the ovens. As a result of that, he became a believer in Jesus Christ, and I believe that he was led to the Lord so that his son could do what he's doing, because the son is making a magnificent impact on the world. I was impressed by how many Jewish people are in that congregation, how many Jewish people are on staff, and they're proud of their heritage. You know, the Bible says that God would bless Abraham, and he would bless the people that would bless Abraham and his family, and he would curse the people who would curse Abraham and his family. And so I just love to be hooked up with Jewish people, and several times in my life and ministry we've been able to partner together, and this looks like an ongoing partnership. You may one day meet Dimitri Mason. For sure you're going to meet one of the guys from the church that drove me around. He's bringing his family here on vacation, and so we want to hook up. It was just an interesting time. I met with some Russian pastors, and it was so hard to imagine the Cold War, to imagine that our two countries were at loggerheads with each other all this time, when the people are so nice and they're so hungry for Jesus. In the Ukraine now, about 10% of the population are charismatic Christians. You still have the Orthodox Church doing its thing, but again, not a lot of attendance. It's the charismatics that are changing the world, and that brings me back to us, and I need to finish with this. Our church has been, what we always say, a global local church, a local church with a strong outreach around the world. And my traveling on these trips is part of that outreach. But the whole reason that I go, the whole reason that I'm invited, is to talk about what we're doing at home, making disciples, building mini churches, building leaders, and multiplying churches. And we really need to pay attention in this coming year to this. We've just had our largest attendance ever in terms of Easter. We've had our largest Christmas attendance ever, and we've had our largest monthly attendance in terms of the last 4 or 5 months in the history of our church. And yet we have actually shrunken in the number of mini churches in the last year from 105 to 94, which is kind of freaking me out. It's like you got a tree that's blossoming and it's doing wonderful things on top, and the root system is shriveling and could die. And so it says that we've got to pay attention to making disciples, to building friendships, to just coming out of ourselves and leading others in their walk with the Lord, because God is sending so many people our way. And we've got to be thinking about building buildings, because we need to house them. 10 o'clock service, 8 o'clock service are both becoming a zoo in terms of the number of people attending. We just got to do whatever it is that we have to do to build a base at home so we can continue to reach the world. You know, we're up to 700 plus churches around the world, not counting people like Dimitri or the people in France, people that I go and encourage to do stuff. This is churches where we started a church, they started a church, they started a church, and we want to see more of that happen. I believe that in the next 5 years we could see that number run up to 1,000. By the end of Carl's lifetime, that could be 5,000. We need to be praying that way. We need to be acting that way. We need to be acting out our faith.